The built-in data annotations only get us so far. Some business rules or validation rules cannot be covered with those built-in data annotations. Imagine that we have a rule that states that the description must be different from the title of a course. We can't easily cover that with the built-in data annotations, but we do want to check for this, and we also want any validation errors resulting from that rule not being adhered to result in an invalid model state. We can do that. Let's open the course for manipulation DTO. There's an interface we can implement, iValidatable object. Let's do that. This interface provides a way for an object to be invalidated in any way we want. It requires us to implement one method, validate. It's to this method that we can add our business rule. The validation context provides info on and access to the object we're working on, amongst other things that can be useful during validation. We currently have no need for that because we already have access to the object, which is our course. So we check whether the title matches the description. If that is the case, we return a new validation result with yield return. Yield return makes sure that the validation result is immediately returned, after which code execution will continue. A validation result object is an object that is used to provide error messages and related properties. In our case, the message is that the provided description should be different from the title. As far as the related property is concerned, or member names, well, we're not dealing with just one property, as this is a cross-property validation rule. The value we input here is something we can choose. We could pass through both title and description, or we could pass through something else, say course, for the parent object we're dealing with. Both are valid approaches. Let's give this a try. We're in Postman. I've got a request lined up here that will try to update a course for an author with a title that's the same as the description. Let's send it. And we see that our custom rule got fired. It returned an error message for course, and the error message we get back is the one we inputted. Our validatable object works. Let's try something else. Let's try inputting the same value for title and description, and both values are too long. That should trigger an additional rule from a previous demo. Let's give this a try. And this time we get back two errors, both related to our attributes. The errors are the result of our maximum length checks on title and description. But our cross-property validation isn't fired. We don't see a message stating that the description should be different from the title, even though the value for the description property is the same as the value for the title property. The reason for this is that the validate method is not executed when one of the data validation annotations already resulted in the object being invalid. This is the default, and this may or may not fit your use case. Often, cross-property validation rules are more complex than property validation rules, so it can make sense to not want to execute the cross-property validation rules if the inputted value is already invalid anyway. One way to avoid this is to either only use data validation attributes or write all your validation rules in the validate method. That being said, for most use cases, the default way of doing this makes sense. We didn't use the validation context in this example, but it is quite important in my opinion, so let's have a look at an alternative for iValidatable object in which we will use a validation context. Class level validation with custom attributes.